This has all been a scam. The WJ is listening, and this was a test to see if you know all the different levels of black belt hierarchy of being a writer.
Exactly. It's kind of right.
What's good? Thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of The Newest Olympian. My name is Mike Schubert. I'm the titular Newest Olympian. I'm a 31-year-old man who never read the Percy Jackson books as a kid. I read them as an adult to determine if society had been sleeping on the book series. I said they are. And now I've been covering the TV show to see if society's been sleeping on the whole series. And I believe that the TV show has helped and people are enjoying the show for good reason. And I'm here to talk with someone who was involved in the production of the show. It's going to be a very fun interview. We are here joined today by Daphne Olive, staff writer for Percy Jackson and the Olympians. Daphne, how's it going?
Hey, it's so nice to be here.
I am delighted to have you on the show. It was such a fun pleasure to meet you in the Met, in whatever fancy hallway that we were in, surrounded by gorgeous art and architecture and statues, and then just talking about the show, which very quickly turned into your personal brand, which is very politely yelling at people to watch Black Sails. So it was a great conversation.
That is indeed my brand. I was like, whatever. I'm a writer on TV shows, but really should watch this other TV show.
Oh, it's great. And it's something I did want to ask about because I think that the timeline of how you got to be a part of this production is fascinating to me because from what you had said, I believe that the timeline, and I would love just like a background of how this all came to be, was you were podcasting about Black Sails, and then you got to meet folks from production of Black Sails, which then turned into you being a staff writer for The Old Man and for Percy Jackson and the Olympians. Did I get that right? I'm sure there's other things in between.
You got that right. That is the perfect short version of it. That's awesome. Yes, that is how it happened. It's bizarre to me because I was not like you, a professional podcaster even. I was basically just a fan doing a podcast.
Well, don't worry. I didn't necessarily study any of this. I only became professional because enough people listened to it that I was able to stop pretending that I enjoyed engineering. So
that's amazing. I love that.
I'm very fortunate and I'm happy to be able to talk about this. But as far as you getting to work on the show, was Percy Jackson before or after writing on The Old Man? Another show with a lot of the same production folks from Black Sails and now Percy Jackson.
Right. Kind of, it's been in tandem, to be honest. I mean, I started on The Old Man, and I don't remember how long it was on The Old Man before they brought me into Percy Jackson, but I've been working on Percy Jackson, not from the beginning, obviously, but from early days. But it's been, for a lot of us, an interesting life of having our heads in two stories at once or trying to focus on one at a time, but that it, never really plays out that way. But I'm part of a group of people for whom that's true.
And being with that group, there's a lot of crossover between folks who've been involved in Black Sails, folks who've been involved in Percy Jackson. I think that contributes to just all of the cohesion that goes into the show, whether that is the production team, showrunners, directors. Like, I feel like there's a lot of, even, all the cast now, everyone just seems to get along so well. And I think that is because of what has been fostered by the production team. From your perspective of actually being on that team, is that true? What are all the things that kind of lead to everyone really seeming to not only get along, but work really well together?
Well, the funny thing is that I actually got a preview of this before I was invited into it, because as a podcaster, I interviewed a lot of people who worked on Black Sails, and I now agree with everything they used to say, is that it's honestly the magic that is the combination of John Steinberg and Dan Schatz. They are wonderful to work with. I mean, I can't say enough good things about them, but they are wonderful to work with. They are inspiring. They let you know when they're inspired by you. It's just a really nice thing. And they foster communities of wonderful, creative people who get to be creative together. And it's I mean, I think that's it. It sounds simple, but I know that it takes so much work and intention on their parts to create that kind of environment, because this world is not easy and often very high pressured on many levels. This is why people keep coming back to work with them. I think it's just really nice. So yes, I think I think that it comes out in the stories. When people are happy and fulfilled, they do their best work, right? Like, isn't that true of everything? And so I think that that is a huge part of the story of both shows, but also, huge part of the story of Percy Jackson is just this environment that was created that really is created by the top, and then everyone gets to live in an environment that is best for fostering your creativity.
Yeah. I mean, I think it works for the creation of the show, but also especially a show that involves younger actors. You want to have a welcoming situation and community. And I think that it also translates to just the Percy Jackson fandom that Rick has fostered.
Yes.
Everyone has been so accepting and welcoming to me, even as a latecomer. And I think that it works really well. And it's nice to hear that they are fostering a good working environment, because I feel like you just hear more and more of stories of these people who are very talented and very acclaimed. And then it's like, oh, they were terrible to people on set. And it's like, well, that's how writers' rooms are. It's like, do they have to be though? So I'm glad that this show and the other shows that this team works on can be the against the grain case of, well, what if instead of berating people, we were just nice? And then everyone put out good work because they were happy instead of intimidated and terrified.
Exactly. Well, and it's interesting. I mean, it's so true that what you said about the fandom. Like, I have been paying attention to the fandom since I started, partly because that's the world that brought me into television. So it's like, it is a lovely fandom.
Yeah.
It truly, truly is. And so, yeah, it's really neat when these two universes of people who are like nice and supportive to each other, like end up being attached to each other. Like, sorry, not to be like too like everything is rainbows and lollipops, but
if
it
they
kind
are,
of is.
then it's okay.
Right. But yeah, it's true, and I'm so happy if the feedback that everyone's getting from the kids is good on that front, because I know that from the production side, I mean, this is not my job. I mean, I enjoy them and I enjoyed hanging out with them, and I certainly love talking to them about the books. But the people who are in charge of making sure that they are comfortable and supported and kind of ensconced in a world that is going to take care of them, that is how they felt, because I know that was everyone's intention.
Yeah, I think it worked. Now, you had mentioned the fandom and the books. Did you have any experience with the series before being brought on, or was it brought to you, hey, you might be able to work on the show? Oh, let me quick read all the books. What was your Percy Jackson history pre the show?
Well, my Percy Jackson history is funny. I never read the books before that. Obviously, now I've read them many times. I have a teenage daughter who also did not read the books. But, so it's like I was a parent who brought my younger daughter when she was in middle school to or elementary school and middle school, to Percy Jackson themed birthday parties and stuff like that. So I was very aware of it, and I was very into the idea of it because Greek mythology has always been one of my biggest interests, which actually started with my name.
Yep.
I'm not Greek. I have a name from Greek mythology. And so I grew up with my parents reading it to me with Greek mythology books. Like, I always felt really connected to it because, pretty much Greek mythology and Scooby-Doo, my childhood. I felt like both of them were kind of made to make me happy.
Yes. All right, Scooby-Doo, we'll have to talk to you about getting on my mystery podcast, Meddling Adults, to solve some Scooby-Doo crimes, but that's for another day.
You have
I have a podcast called Meddling Adults where I host and guests compete to solve children's mysteries for charity. And a lot of the episodes come from Scooby-Doo, and specifically my favorite Scooby-Doo version, which is What's New Scooby-Doo, the 2003 reboot, which is just truly perfection. So yeah, we'll have to get you on for a season 5 episode.
Okay, we'll have to talk about that. That's amazing. So yeah, I mean, it's really fun for anyone who chooses to make the right choices in their life and watch Black Sails. And then if they choose to listen to my podcast, you'll hear that I do
Fathoms Deep, by the way.
Fathoms Deep. Sorry, right. My podcast, Fathoms Deep. I'm really bad at promoting myself. You would hear that I actually use Greek mythology a lot to talk about other stories because they are primary archetypes that are very useful that way. And even in The Old Man, I used to use Greek mythology as a way to suggest relationship structures for characters in The Old Man even.
That's really nice.
So yeah, so it's like I came into it with no knowledge of Percy Jackson really, and a lot of love and history with Greek mythology. I was never a scholar of it, but just, just personal interest. And so it was really fun for me then to start reading the books, and especially fun as it went on. I mean, I love all of the books, but the 5-book story is really just so beautiful. And so it's just been a delight to be able to help adapt it.
Yeah. So with adapting, there are obviously lots of things that either directly come from the book or you have to get changed. And there are, I think some of the myths are getting fleshed out, which is cool, like to see with Medusa and with Echidna and some of the stuff that necessarily wasn't in the book. When you have things coming that are done differently in the show that are done in the book, what is like the structure of how that happens? Is that Rick and John coming in, saying what they want to do? Is that you and other folks involved in writing coming up with ideas? Is it a mix of everything? How does it happen when there's a change?
So it's funny. I feel like I keep ending up like describing what a writer's room feels like.
Also, yeah, I've got to say, like, I've never been in one, so I don't know what's going on here.
No, it's great. No, and I wasn't either. No, I'm not saying that to shame you. I'm saying it because it is. It's like this mystery. It's like we all love television and we know there are writers, and it's this neat, like a writer's room is a really magical space, is how I'm going to start describing it.
Great.
But really what happens in a writer's room is it's a safe space. Like that's one of, I think, the first things I learned. It was like, I had to learn this culture. It was a completely foreign culture to me. I started learning it in The Old Man and then continued in Percy Jackson. But, the outlining overall was John and Rick. And then when we start, kind of like figure out how to translate this, like, this is how, the portioning of the episodes is going to be based on the book, then you really have to like figure out how to take those portions and turn them into television episodes, which is a very different structure. I mean, obviously books have chapters, but they don't have episodes in the same way that episodes, And so then it's really, honestly, in a lot of ways, not a free-for-all, like that was the word I was about to use, but that's not right. It's everyone brings ideas, obviously, but like, it's not just bringing ideas. It's like everyone has different ways of constructing story, like that come naturally to them or that they've learned. But it's just like everyone is contributing. It's like, I keep thinking of it as like, it's like a buffet. And like an amazing buffet where you have all these people with all these ideas and all these ways of like bringing emotion and relationships and dialogue into the structure that is a television episode and a television season, right? Because you can never think about it just as an episode or just as a full season. You have to think about both simultaneously structurally. And so that's what happens, is that just everyone starts contributing, everyone talks. There's a lot of like, I know this is like an improv comedy thing, that like kind of yes and thing. Like there's a lot of that. It's just like, there's just this magic that happens when you have all of these people just sitting and talking and problem solving and figuring and contributing stuff from their lives, from their understanding of humans, from, structures from other stories, structures from mythology. And it's just, there's an alchemy that happens. And I know that sounds really vague and like magic talk, but to some extent it is that. Like, it's just like, that's, so, when you're talking about the mythology being brought in or stuff like that, obviously there's some changes that happen because of just production realities. Mm-hmm. I know that everyone has talked about this and I'm talking about it too, but it's true. It's just that the beautiful opportunity of switching from a closed first person POV, which you cannot do in television. I mean, I guess you could, but nobody really wants to watch that.
So much narration and voiceover, and it would be a tough watch.
So then there's this beautiful thing. It's like Rick created all these amazing characters, but we get to flesh them out in a new way because we have to look at the world through their eyes.
Yeah.
It's this neat puzzle of like, who are they? It has to, of course, all be rooted in the original story, but you have this, this kind of flowering that you can do from what you know of them, from the way Percy experienced them, to then build what it is for them, their experience of the world, of themselves, of their backstories, of where they're going, their hopes and dreams, their experience of Percy from their eyes at him, which is something you don't have really in the books. So I'm not sure if I answered that well, but that's what I have to say about writers' rooms and adaptation.
It's perfect. I love it. No, I think that's been a really interesting thing with the show. It's something that I know with the sequel books, people are very excited for me to get into those because it's not just first person. And I know some people have said that you get to see what other people think about Percy, which is interesting. And I think that has been a fun thing in the show as well. So when it came to adding in some of those mythological elements, since you had that background in knowing a lot of mythology, was there a particular myth you were really excited to work on? Was that Medusa, just based on your various snake clothing and accessories, which I do know you also do jewelry design, so we can get to that as well. But I would guess Medusa, but was there anything else across the season that you were like, oh man, I'm a huge fan of Procrustes. I gotta get it in.
Well, okay, I'm not a huge fan of Procrustes, but I am a huge fan of Theseus, and he is part of the Theseus story. So there is that. Yeah, Theseus is my favorite hero. I might as well just say that straight up. And I also believe that in many ways Percy is a Theseus because he tracks Theseus' story in a lot of ways. But
totally.
Yes, it is Medusa. The Medusa, and I don't consider it Medusa. It's the Medusa Athena story.
Yeah.
Right? Because it's actually about both of them.
True.
So yes, the Medusa Athena story is one that is very dear to my heart and I've put a lot of thought into. Yeah, anything having to do with Theseus and then ultimately fate as a mythological thing, as a philosophical thing. So fate and prophecies generally is one of my favorite things. I did not grow up with this book series, but I did grow up as a lover of fantasy. Like one of my favorite books is about Theseus. It's called The King Must Die. And that's a book that I grew up. I was assigned it in middle school and then read it over and over again throughout my life. And it is a book that has a really wonderful outlook and way of it's not like telling you how to think, but it's like the story brings you down a really wonderful path of both investigating what it means to be a hero and fate and prophecy.
I really like it.
Yeah.
That's great. Well, Theseus does come into play in future books, as I'm sure you're aware. So if we get some good stuff, it could be fun. It could be really fun. Now, this is just something structurally I am fascinated in general by the way things are titled in TV shows. I always think it's really funny when you have like starring, guest starring, special guest star Lin-Manuel Miranda. Like all those things are fun. So for you specifically in the way the credits, it says that you are staff writer Daphne Olive, whereas other writers are written for television by. What is the difference between one versus the other?
Okay, so staff writer, like those are actually two questions.
Oh, cool. Okay.
Yeah. So staff writer is basically entry-level writer. Like that's what it means. It means that I haven't been doing this before. Like, and even though I had the one other show, I think because they happen in tandem, I was staff writer on both of them. Okay. But for season 2 for The Old Man, I am the next level up, which is story editor. Same job. It doesn't actually, it's just, these are, we have a union, which everyone's aware of right now. Because we're on strike for a long time. Right. So yeah, a lot of that part, like the actual titles of type of writer are actually things that have been negotiated over, many, many years about that and have to do with pay and stuff like that and all sorts of different things having to do with the guild and agreements between the guild and the studios. Mm-hmm. When you see someone credited with written, there's written by, sometimes that's one person, sometimes two, sometimes there's story by, which I don't know if we have here. No. Like those all have to do with the actual writing of scenes and dialogue and that. And I don't completely understand the nuances of that part of it. But that's the difference, is that staff writer is a level. So you'll see in those gorgeous credits that like a lot of the writers are either executive producer. I think some of them are co-producer. Like executive producer is not a writing level, but like in the levels that start at staff writer, there are some of them that go up to, I should know, but I always forget the actual, sorry.
This has all been a scam. The WGA is listening, and this was a test to see if you know all the different levels of black belt hierarchy of being a writer.
Exactly. It's kind of right.
It's so like it's red, just, blue, brown.
No, it's not like black belts because you don't actually have to pass a test to move to the next level. It's like, right. It's about longevity and things like that. But so there's some of those like names that are about their writer level, and some of those names, like if somebody like Monica is an executive producer, so like that's a different kind of also set of responsibilities. Mm-hmm. And then when you see the credits on the actual episodes, that has to do with like, even though we're all involved in the ideas and even like breaking down of the scenes and all of like what's in the story, the credited writers are the ones who actually wrote it.
Got it. And as far as the actual work, as opposed to just the titling of it, the type of thing that you're doing, is it more than, I'm assuming it's more than just like writer's room all talking together? Are there times where it's like, I don't know, truly, I know how nothing works. Like, do you get homework? It's like, Daphne, go home and write pages 12 to 17. Like, how does your actual like work break down, and is it different from the other people?
So not go write pages, blah, 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 because then I would be credited as one in one way as, right? But so like what I do is a lot like, I write a lot of stuff that's not the script. Like I'll write ideas and share them with everyone of like, how could we use this myth that is in the story, but like if we take these other things from that myth, like maybe we could use that. And like one of the ways I focus is a lot like big thematic ideas. Like I probably shouldn't list them because that would feel, even though everyone's watched season 1, it just feels like, these themes aren't. But yeah, but like, how to use the idea of fate, how to always keep in mind the end game and the great prophecy. And then a lot of like, emotional stuff. Like I'm an idea generator. I mean, I think that's the easiest way to say it. And it's like, it comes in a lot of different forms, but like, that's the part of the job I love is just, it's funny. I mean, staff writer, even though I'm not going to be a staff writer anymore on The Old Man, but like the support staff, I just love it. I love to it's like literally my job just to think up cool things and then share them.
That's great. It's an ideal job. That
I know,
sounds
right?
Fantastic.
Best job ever.
That's really solid. Yeah. It feels very like if you're playing a support class, either in a video game or D&D or something, where you're like, I just want to help everyone. I want to bring out the most out of everyone. It's pretty much super cool.
That is my goal. And just to get to like, again, I'm playing with these wonderful playgrounds of these beautiful books and this beautiful, background of mythology, which again is, archetypal, and in that it so much it just speaks to human experience, right? So it's just like, then I just get to like, just basically like think about human experience and how like things that are universal or things that we're just going to feel deep in our bones and our hearts, like how to bring as much of that into this translation of this story from book to screen.
That's great. Now, speaking of that translation from book to screen, there's something that the show does that isn't done in the book that I would be interested to know the writing process of, is basically telling the story a bit out of order, utilizing flashbacks, and even when it's outside of the dream. I think the clearest example of this is episode 8, when you have Percy getting ready to fight Ares. And something I'd been wondering on the podcast for like multiple episodes, I was like, how the heck is Percy going to fight Ares? Mm-hmm. He has not had any sword training. He's going to get squashed. He's supposed to win. I know what happens, but like he doesn't know what to do. And then in episode 8, you kind of have the not sequential timeline thing where you see Luke has taught Percy stuff. Right. And I thought that was so cool. So when you are writing something where it's A, different from the book, and then B, just not necessarily in linear order, what is that like? Was there a particular emphasis on that?
Well, I can't take credit for that decision, because that was Craig's decision, and it was a beautiful decision. I can speak to like the overall thinking a little bit about Luke. Wait, what is your approach to book spoilers? Am I allowed to talk about anything in all 5 books?
Correct.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, it's something I should have done at the beginning of the TV show episodes, not realizing people are not going to like listen all with the podcast. So I probably will go back into the TV show episode 1 and put an audio thing that's like, "Hi, my bad."
Yeah. Oops. So like one of the beautiful things about adapting a story where the books, I know, I'm going to say the books are all written because I'm going to talk about the 5, now 6 books of this series.
Even Rick calls them like the new ones. I think are separate. So yeah, we can say the 5 PJO books.
The new ones, new one. So we only have one so far. But like the concept of it feels like not an epilogue exactly, but like a coda to the 5-book series that very much has an ending that wraps the 5 books up. So one of the beautiful things about having the 5 books, like, it's such a treat because we know where it's going.
Yeah.
Right? In a way that an author, no writer knows everything about where they're going when they start, right? That is
Blackjack I know is a girl in book 2 and is a boy in book 3.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. I did not notice that. And that's an adorable Rickism. And I love that he like 100% cops to that like, he's just yep, sometimes I do different things in different books. I love that about him.
God, it's so good.
Yeah.
He's so humble and down to earth. And it's especially fun for me coming from the Harry Potter world first, where J.K. Rowling is like, I meant everything ever. I've never made a mistake in my life. Oh.
Right. And I mean, this is a thing, like, I think I did a Twitter thread about this back in my podcaster days. It's just like, there is this weird, I will get back to your question, I promise. I'm just going to
No, I love tangents.
Segue for
you're
a second.
talking to the mayor of Tangent Town. Come on.
Okay, awesome. So like, there's this thing that people have where they want to believe that writers, I'll separate writers from other artists in this case, that writers had everything plotted out in their mind from the very beginning, and that's a sign of genius. It's always struck me as a little odd because I was like, no, the genius is combining whatever your plan was with the spark of what happens in the process.
That's nice.
And that's the amazing thing, right? Because it's just like, I know this, like, you're writing and like, there are things you learn about even your own intent in the process of writing it down.
Yeah.
In podcasting, that was a thing too. It was like you go into the podcast and you think you know what you're going to talk about, but then you're talking to someone and you're like, and there's this creative moments where you're just like, oh, that was a direction I didn't expect the conversation to go at all. And now I have all these new thoughts and interviewing, right? Like so all of these things, it's just like, if we only came in with like, this is my plan, I'm going to execute the plan perfectly, you just took away all the magic.
Yeah.
So back to the question. I don't think there is such a thing as an author who makes something that truly touches people's souls if they only wrote exactly what they planned from the beginning. I mean, I guess, sorry to if there is that person who managed to do that. I apologize for like leaving you out of the magic, but whatever. But what we have is the full 5-book story. And so that's one of the greatest gifts, like that we could then talk about what is the emotional core of the ending of the story and how can we bring that stuff even farther forward to the places where I can't speak for Rick, but like for the places where he hadn't yet figured out exactly what the shape. Again, this is not a conversation he and I have. I'm not speaking for him.
He has said it though. He has said like, this show gives me the opportunity to kind of do things different. And I think a big example is a lot of the stuff in episode 6 where you're talking with Hermes, you get like a lot of those book 5 Hermes, Luke, May things,
Right.
which I think is good to introduce into season 1, because when I got to book 5, I read that whole chapter and I was like, wow, they're kind of laying on the Luke tragic backstory pretty hard so that we're trying to like him, which I feel like is a Rick thing of, I hadn't really figured it out yet. And if I did, we would have had it earlier rather than just like, I think still it was a well done job, but I think it makes more sense to spread out the sympathy for Luke as opposed to just like really putting it on hard in the beginning of book 5.
Right.
Now with that, I guess not hindsight, but foresight of what did come, but is to come, by knowing what happens in book 5, you can put it into episode 6 of season 1 and it works.
Well, and not just that we can play with how these different stories interact with each other in ways that also
how Last
right?
Olympian touches Lightning Thief. Yeah.
Right. But not just that, like May's a seer, but also Sally's a seer. Right.
We throw Rachel Elizabeth there in the mix, baby.
Right, exactly. So it's just like these are the thematic things in the book series that like we have the gift of knowing where they're going, so we can start to like have them blossom and grow from the first season in a way that, you know, ideally, if we're doing our jobs properly, will make that ending feel even more integrated. And that these stories can start playing off of each other, right? Like when Echidna's talking about parents and children, like this whole story is parents and children.
Yeah.
Like everyone's parents and children, like Percy and Sally, parent and child, Athena and Zeus, parent and child. Like everyone are parents and children, because in Greek mythology, not just in this book series, in Greek mythology, they are all one big family. It's just all of these opportunities because, again, that buffet that I was talking about, the buffet is so much bigger because we know where it's going.
Yeah.
So it just gives us all these opportunities to make connections.
The family thing I think is really interesting because I think it is certainly something felt across the show. You get a little bit more of Sally's parenting techniques. You get a little bit more of Poseidon as a parent. And then in the finale, there were just a couple of like quick little lines that continue to drive the family stuff home. You have when Percy is talking to Zeus, he says, Ares, your son stole the ball. And just adding the your son. And then I think even Zeus might have said, when he's talking about Cronus and locking him up, he might have said like my father Cronus or whatever it is. There's more references to family stuff and it's just like tiny little lines, but it continues to drive stuff home that has been throughout the whole season and sometimes is very deliberately done, like all of the Echidna stuff and saying it's a family story. But even just those little tiny nuggets, it's something I think the show has emphasized more so, at least more directly than the books did early on. And that's been very fascinating.
I mean, more directly, I think is the right way to look at it because, I mean, that's what's so neat about the way that Rick combined the mythological world and stories to a very real our world, right? Is that it's just what it's inviting is for you to take these archetypical stories and relate them to your own life or relate them to other people's lives, right? It's like, which ultimately isn't that what we all want from stories? We want stories to make us feel things that have to do with things we understand from our world. And so I just feel like it was all there. Like all of that family stuff was there. And again, you don't really want to hear a 12-year-old. I mean, yes, Percy does say those lines, but you don't want to hear a 12-year-old in a book just like go on and on about family structure, like, because that just would be weird. That would be weird from a 12-year-old's perspective for him to just be like, I know all this stuff about how families work, even from a parent's perspective, although I'm not a parent, you know?
Yeah.
So that was one of the things was that because we got to have many people's point of view, and those people come from different parts of that dynamic and that structure and that hierarchy within their world, they get to have opinions about that and feelings about it and things that, you know, were painful for them or exciting for them or, you know, what their motivations are or their grudges. All of those things become our, you know, the tools that we can use to tell the story at this point.
Yeah. No, it's been really well done, and I'm excited to see what other kind of big overarching themes can come into future seasons. And now I know that that is your particular job. I look forward to the future credits as big ideas person. I guess maybe that's the thing. After you've done story editor for a year, you got to wait for that.
I think I will lobby for the WGA to create a classification of big ideas person. I think that would be awesome. That would be great.
And then each year you could be like big ideas person, huge ideas person, enormous idea, just with each year it can scale and scale.
Yes, I will propose that to the Guild.
As far as the timeline of you actually working on the show, is it just you do all of the writing, the show starts filming, and then that's it? Or I know with some shows, they kind of adjust writing either based on what happened during the filming, afterwards. Is there more stuff for you to work on after filming has begun? Or is it just, I'm done, they're filming it, let's move on?
Yeah, I mean, I was only working during the actual official writing of it, which did coincide with the filming of it. So we were still writing when filming started, I think. Yes, we were absolutely still writing when filming started. Pretty sure that it was a while ago. Pretty sure that's how it worked out. I was very lucky that I could also visit set just for fun, which is what I did.
I was going to ask, did you get to go for part of it, all of it, certain days? What did you get to see on set?
Yeah, I think I visited set 4 times. Again, not in my official role as a writer, but allowed to be there because of my official role as a writer.
You know a guy.
Yeah, super fun. Magical, actually, in fact. I'm new to this, as we established in the beginning. So it's all, for me, it's just like I was invited to join the circus and I get to see how the circus works. And so every bit of it is just, I'm just a wide-eyed, excited kid every time I'm on set.
Yeah.
Because it's amazing. It is amazing, this, giant ecosystem of talented people who work together to make a thing.
Yeah. Now, when you're on set, I guess, does that ever inform your writing of thinking of the actual, how it turns into the show? Was actually seeing it being done, does that kind of formulate any of the other work that you would do either for future episodes or if a season 2 happens?
Probably, yes. I mean, I think every writer will tell you this, that it's once you experience the actors' voices, in the beginning, there's the voice kind of in your head, which is, of course, then is a collaborative thing of all the writers in the writer's room and the versions of the voices of the characters in their heads. But once the actors are added to that chorus, I mean, I can't quantify exactly how that affects things, but it always does. Then you are now, kind of experiencing how the character would behave with the added data of the way that the actor has been translating that character into a living, breathing version of themselves. So yes, there's that. Yeah, I mean, for me, it's all a learning process. So learning how script goes to production, goes to post-production, all of that is all very helpful for understanding that it's not just our hopes and dreams and story structure, there are production realities too. So that's been a really fun part of it for me to learn about how to think in those terms as well.
Cool. One thing from production that I did learn, just because I think Dan Schatz posted something to his Instagram where he had his badge on it and it said the working title was Mink Golden.
Yes.
For the show while it was going on. I'm assuming that would be a golden fleece joke, but is there anything, someone came up with it, the reference? I just find working titles so fascinating.
No. Oh, shoot.
I mean, working title in big air quotes because everyone knew it was going to be called Percy Jackson and the Olympians or something similar.
Shoot, there's a funny story, and it had to do with I wish I remembered the details. You are going to have to ask either John or Dan, or if you talk to Zoe Neary, I know she was involved in that. Okay. Oh shoot, I don't remember. It was one of those online name generator things, but I don't remember the details. And so now I'm telling half a story, which is much less fun. So maybe you shouldn't even put this in.
If you want to just tell John, there's a very important interview had to take place where you got to tell Mike about whatever Mink Golden is. I wonder if it's from the Wu-Tang Generator or something, how Childish Gambino got his name. No.
I think that's what it is. I think that's.
Yes.
I think that. I don't know. I don't know for sure.
That's so funny.
No, I was in the same position because I was, I was working remotely because I live in Maryland, not in LA. So I was like, what is this name? How did it get here? And then Zoe Neary told me, and I think that might have been it. But yeah, it was an online name generator.
Okay.
And fun bunch. We're just, like this. It's just a fun bunch of people with sometimes like goofy things like the songs they pick for Tunnels of Love or name generation.
Really good. Gosh, the What is Love drop. Amazing. It's so fun to have the high of the What is Love drop and then the low of, I think I heard this in my orthodontist's office, just 1, 2.
Yes. This, I feel like, is the exact time for me to reinsert the fact that if you love that, you should watch Black Sails.
I am excited.
That is a John Steinberg special if there ever was one.
Amazing. Are there any other particularly fun stories from working on the show? Any sort of fun, one that you full remember as opposed to half remember? Is there a particular story of, oh man, this is a really silly, goofy thing? Anything. I always just love asking folks if there's any sort of fun thing from behind the scenes that people might not have known.
Oh goodness, I probably have so many. I should have some prepared, shouldn't I?
Or even, I think one thing that when I had talked to John and Dan and James, they had said that Consensus, for example, started as a joke in the writer's room of like, oh yes. Yeah, like what if Grover like sang a song? And then as time went on, it's like, what if Grover sang a song?
Yes.
So are there other questions related to jog your memory? Could be, was there another thing that was like, ha ha ha, a joke? And then, oh, actually, when Luke says this,
Oh man. Oh, I should really have some of those. Okay, I'm just going to tell you random stories. They're not writer's room stories, but one of my more recent favorite moments was I did not get to meet Glynn Turman on set.
Oh.
It just didn't work out timing wise. So I did meet him at the premiere.
His cowboy hat. Mwah.
Amazing. And I will forever just enjoy the memory of when I said the words party ponies to him.
Oh,
his reaction was amazing. He was so excited. So that's a thing.
Was that his first time hearing the phrase, or was he familiar? Had he read past the first book, or did you open his eyes?
I was the first person who ever said party ponies to him, it seems. So,
incredible. Yes,
that was a gift. One of my other favorite memories, again, this is not about production exactly. One of my other favorite memories, my first time on set was the week of filming the Minotaur fight, which was very damp. Like the volume stage, it was just like, it was all like everything got wet. The like scenery on the stage just started to like get a little stinky. Everything was wet. Poor Walker was just wet.
I feel like that
all
could be
the time.
If he writes a memoir about his time in this show, at least for this first season, I feel like the chapter could be, it was very damp.
I know, it's like, so
we
true.
know he's Percy Jackson, but he is wet for so much of this show.
Well, and the irony of the fact that the character doesn't actually get wet. So that makes it even more funny.
Yeah, he's going to storm in season 2. He's going to put his finger down on a copy of Sea of Monsters, be like, look, he stays dry. Come on.
He's well aware. There are a few people who know these books as well as Walker. But I don't even know how one does that. Like, how do you make a rainy scene with 3 actors in it and one of them's not getting wet?
It would be a mess. It would be such a mess. I think that's something you just got to say. It's a TV show. It's just impossible to make true magic.
So instead, everyone seemed to like totally dig into making him as wet as possible all the time. So I came on set during that week, and it was stinky and wet and hilarious, and that was when I met the kids for the first time, and Walker, I think he had just done like an Instagram live or something where people were like asking questions, and one of them asked him to rate the books,
like rank them.
Yeah, rank the books. So the first time, so he came up to me, he was introduced to me, he said, "Oh, great, you're one of the writers. Rank the books." Just like that. That was our first meeting.
Okay. Well, now I have to ask, what did you pick, and do you stand by your rankings?
God, I don't even know what I picked. The funny thing is, like, it shifts a lot. Mm-hmm. I think my favorite book is book 5 because I love how it all wraps up in the Great Prophecy. Like,
it's really tough to pick anything but 5.
Right. And then 3. And then, this is where I get surprising, 2.
Ooh, I
I
see.
know,
I
right?
really do like them, but I think two is like in quotation marks the consensus least favorite. But I think it's like we're talking, 9.9 and a 9.7 or something. But I like that spicy pick for number three.
Yep, yep. So he also, I know that I did that with him, and he was just like, "What?" And I told him why, and I'm not going to say it because even though that's not a spoiler, I don't want to talk about what
Right. Big picture ideas that might find their way into season two if it happens. Knock on wood.
exactly. So, and he was like, he agreed that that was a legitimate reason to like book two. I don't think I convinced him, but so yeah, but that was an adorable way to meet him. Other favorite things I was there for the diner scene in episode 5.
Oh man,
So I got to witness all of the takes of Aryan and Adam.
that scene is so good. Are there any? I mean, you've seen 5 now. Are there any things that like, they tried to do something, they were like, have a little more fun with this one that either didn't make it? Did Edge ever body slam him? I don't know what Edge's signature move is, but I don't know if he put him in the.
He's such a gentle giant man.
Oh.
Yes, no body slamming. No, it's not that. It's just that it was a delight to watch them play with it. And honestly, I feel like that man deserves some sort of award for taking that much exposition and turning it into a scene that is like one of the most engaging scenes in the whole series.
It is so fascinating. I think it might be my favorite thing in the show. And it's just also, like you're saying, just such a creative job of like that whole conversation is like pages upon pages worth of things that Percy learns from Chiron and Annabeth in camp. And then it's turned into a conversation. And for this conversation and all of the dialogue that is quote unquote exposition dumps, which I don't agree with because they don't feel like that. Mm-hmm. It still sounds like a cohesive conversation that those two characters would have in that moment. It is so impressive. It's really well done.
Yeah, he did a great job with it. And yes, exactly. Like we couldn't just have all of episode 2 be like
camp
information.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, you would have had to make a second camp episode.
We're at camp, but it's really boring because all that happens in this episode is like people talk at Percy. Which again, in the book, it doesn't feel that way because you experience books so differently, right? Because your imagination is going the whole time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But in a visual medium, like we have to, and in an episodic structure, we had to find a way for all of these very important things about the world to happen, to be exposed, but it can't all happen at one time. So that was one of the fun, that's where I feel like, it's just a fun puzzle. It's just like, when is the right time for this part? And ideally you want the information about the world to tie into the emotional core of that episode as well. So that's also part of the puzzle. It's like, when will this aspect of the world's introduction speak to what's happening with the characters in the moment?
It's funny because now you are describing something that I had made a joke on the podcast where my thought was like, it feels like they took all of the things Percy learns and put it on like Post-it notes on a whiteboard and then reshuffled it into like what episodes make the most sense. And I think you are just describing, well, this is exactly what you did.
It is. I mean, that sounds much more organized than the way we did it, but
just yelling.
No, it just, because again, it's, that's the thing I was saying earlier. It's like part of it's the magic of like, oh, wait, this is the emotional core of this episode. And then then you're like, oh, great. There's this piece of like the aspect of the world or the family or whatever that actually like plugs into this thing that we discovered is the emotional core of this episode.
Yeah, that's really cool. Now, you were there for the diner scene. Did you get to eat any of the diner food? I talked to Jet and they said that like a bunch of stuff was getting cooked. I don't know if...
Oh, you know what? It would never even occur to me because the craft services on this set were amazing.
All right, give me the rundown. What was the good stuff? What was there?
Every day it was different, like a cook, but it's like, and I've not been a lot of sets. So like I actually had 2 good experiences, both on The Old Man and on Percy Jackson. But on Percy Jackson, the food was so good. And I did hear from everyone who has been doing this for much, much longer than me that it was like especially good. And it really was. It was like I would go to the tent for the craft services and just like there was a menu and luckily they make everything like kind of small. So you actually can like in the span of these long days, you could actually multiple times go back and have these like little snack size things of this really beautifully made food. So yeah, that's a that's a fun detail.
It feels reminiscent of the premiere, where I could have spent the whole time just parked in front of the sushi area and just shoveling.
I believe that's what my husband did.
And he won best first prize at Percy Jackson premiere.
He's like said hi to the people he knows, and he's like, okay, bye. I'm going to go drink drinks and eat yummy food.
It was quite difficult.
You keep talking to your people.
You have fun, honey. I'll go check out. Someone needs to monitor the food. And if it will be me, I will fall on the sword. And I will.
So, he also refilled my glass sometimes and brought me food. And
that's very important. Look, you need that assist. You need that +1. Aside from Glynn, was there someone that you were either most excited to meet or most excited that found their way into the show, a la Jessica Parker Kennedy being cast as Medusa, and you got to be like, yes, another Black salesperson? Was there any sort of casting that really had you super excited?
Oh, well, again, Jess and Toby Stevens both felt like gifts particularly designed for me. But at the premiere, I really wanted to talk to Virginia because I didn't turn out that I was on set when she was. So like being able to, I was so excited to meet Virginia, like truly. And the funny thing is, we were talking a little bit about the kind of dazzling chaos of the premiere. I think I had the conversation I was hoping to have with her about how beautiful her depiction of Sally was, that went beyond any dreams I ever had for Sally. Like, it's just so beautiful. That happened in 3 small portions. It was like, I introduced myself and we were excited and we were talking, but then, that thing, it's like you're talking to someone, but then you end up talking to someone else and you don't even notice how like things shift. And so it was so funny because I ended up across from her in the crowd 3 separate times. And I ended up managing to say all the things I wanted to say to her, but in these 3 chaotic, hilarious portions. Yeah.
Yeah, it was a whirlwind. And for me also being there, it's just like, I don't know how premieres work. I have no idea what's going on. So yeah, it was, there was a lot going on there. So I'm glad that you got to say the things to Virginia that you wanted to say.
Me too.
That's really fun. Well, this has been a lovely chat. Thank you so much for taking the time, giving us, a little peek behind the curtain for all the things that happened in the season. It was a really amazing experience to just see this whole adaptation. I think it is so well made and so creatively done. Are there any other things that we didn't touch on that you want the folks to know about? Is there any other particular part of the experience that really meant a lot to you? Any sort of final parting thoughts?
Honestly, just every bit of this has been such an honor. Like, I know I feel a little silly saying that, but it is really amazing. And I'm so happy that people are enjoying the show. I know what it is to truly deep, deep, deep love a story, which more recently was Black Sails. But I also know the experience of having my favorite story when I was a kid translated into something that felt right and beautiful, and that's Lord of the Rings movies.
Oh,
and
nice.
So, I kind of always had that in my head, was just I know what it feels like when you love a story and then you feel like people lovingly translated that story. And I'm so happy that there are people having that experience. And I just, I want everyone to know that every single person involved in this, that was everyone's intent. That was what everyone's hopes and dreams. It was that this would be just a beautiful experience, especially for the people who grew up with or love the books deeply. Also, of course, for all of the people who didn't have that experience and can fall in love with this. But for me, the thing of having a translation that is meaningful of a story that was always meaningful is just, it's a gift. It's honestly, it was such a gift to be able to be a part of doing that. And I'm happy that a lot of people are loving it.
Yeah, I think that's really sweet. And I think it is something that a lot of other people involved in the production are concerned about. And I think that that is what has led to the success. And it is very refreshing coming off of me covering the movies and seeing just like Rick's emails about them, where he was just like, his big thing of those emails was like, there's a lot of people who care about these books, and I just want that care to be shown in this adaptation, and I don't feel like that's happening. And I don't think that that is the case for this show. I think you can tell that people really want the fans to love it. And I think it does do a great job of giving those folks something that they can be really excited to not only see for themselves, but share with other people. Like you're saying, share it with folks who haven't read it. And I've already had people in my life be like, oh, I watched that show about that book you make a podcast about. Like, I think I'm going to read the books now. So I think it really is working on multiple levels. And you can tell that the production team putting care into the fan perspective, you can tell that that is there. And it's so refreshing to have that emphasis be made. And it's really nice, just as I'm doing more of these interviews, to talk with some of the people, even not as much in the writing room like you are, but even just the actors, even actors who are in for just one episode. They're like, I know a lot of people really care about this, and I want to do a good job for them. And that is just so refreshing and so nice to see.
Yeah. No, it's everyone at every level of making this show. It's been really fun on that level as well.
Yeah, that's great. Well, Daphne, thank you so much for joining. If
Thank
you want to shout out anything else, we've talked about your podcast, the other shows, any other things you want to promote, even if it's just like people following you on social media, anything for the folks to find you?
I am Daphne Olive on all social media. No, that's it. Just Percy Jackson, The Old Man, Black Sails, and my podcast is Fathom Steep. And I still sometimes, actually not infrequently, tweet about Black Sails.
Yeah, I think as recently as, speaking of tweeting stuff, there was one thing I wanted to ask you about, because you tweeted about it. It was in one of the early episodes when they show the stuff in New York. Wasn't it one of your,
yes,
the painting in the background? Yeah. Can you tell the story about that? That's so cool.
Yes. So in episode 3, when they get out of the cab, and, in a lot of cities, they have those kind of banners on light poles. And this was filmed in Vancouver. And so it had something very Vancouver specific on those. And so John asked if he, we are friends in addition to working together. And he knows my daughter, and he knows that she is just an artist as well. And so he asked if we had some paintings that they could use to insert into that space to make it not feel like Vancouver. And so we did. She was also an extra in episode 6.
Oh, very cool. What was she, just like in the Lotus Casino somewhere?
Yeah, she's actually, when you see Hermes and the kids from a distance, when they're in the second place in the cafe, she's one of the 2 people in the foreground.
That's so cool. That is really cool. Was she excited to have her art displayed and then also to be in the show as well?
Yeah, she was. And she had a wonderful experience that day. Like, she got to do, because, the Lotus, all of these costumes and, time frames and stuff. So she got to have the full hair and makeup experience.
Yeah, which era was she dressed in? Because I know it was intentional to have people from all different decades.
Yep, 1970s. She got to pick her decade.
Oh, that's so fun.
Yeah, it was neat. It was really fun.
Super cool.
It was the ideal bring your kid to work day.
Yeah, it's pretty sweet. Pretty tough to beat. Oh, man. Awesome. Well, Daphne, thank you so much for joining and sharing all these fun stories and behind the scenes info. Listeners, thank you for listening. And until I cover, I guess, something else, now that I'm going to have to wait. Oh, my goodness. I have to. I think the next episodes might be about the Sea of Monsters movie. Until you hear those. See you later.
Oh, you didn't do the Sea of Monsters movie yet? Oh,
so I've seen it. I have seen it now. I just haven't released the episodes, because it was gonna be the Lightning Thief movie episodes and then the Sea of Monsters movie episodes, and then you just had to move up the release date. So.
Fair, right? That was not me.
Those are gonna be after. But I have seen the films, so they are, of all the films I've seen, they are 2 of them. I will say that.
Yes, they are absolutely. They are 2 movies that happened.
Those are films. They do exist. They did it.
Yeah, there's something.
Hello and welcome to the Lightning Brief. Wasn't that just a fun interview with Daphne? She is so delightful. I'm so happy that we were able to have her on the show. And we have one more interview in this episode after the break. I'll be posting the audio from the episode 8 relevant questions that I asked Jet Wilkinson, who directed episodes 5, 6, and 8. So that'll be after the break. But before we get into that, let's talk about some updates. I'm recording this mid-roll break in New York City, but the next one won't be in New York City because I'll be on tour in Florida, aka Torrida, and I might be able to stream one of the shows. So even if you don't live in Florida, you might be able to virtually attend one of the Florida shows. I will be in Florida February 8th, 9th, and 10th for live shows in Gainesville, and then Tampa, and then Orlando, one after the other. Each show will be different, so you can come to all of them. Each show will have Johnny Frolickstein as the guest. Each show will be half Potterless, half the Noose Olympian, and each show will slap. You should get tickets at thenooseolympian.com/live, and the one that might get streamed is that first one on February 8th in Gainesville. I'm talking with the streaming company that partners with the venue, so we might be able to get it up, and it would be like a name your own price, pay what you want donation kind of thing, as opposed to a strict ticketed event. But you should just be able to get a link to it. I'm not sure how it works because I just learned this past Friday that it is a possibility. So follow at Noose Olympian on Twitter and Instagram, and I will post more stuff about that there when I figure it out. Hopefully I can get it streamed. And I'm also in talks with some companies in Denver and North Carolina to try to stream one of the live shows that I have coming up in the near future, because it's been a minute since I've done one of the live stream things, and I know that there are people who live in places where I haven't done shows, or conflicts or whatever made it impossible for you to see a live show in person, so I try to stream them when I have the opportunity to do so. So I'm trying to make that happen in the near future. I did mention those other shows. I'm coming to Denver. We added an early show because the late show sold out on February 18th. I'm coming to Phoenix on February 20th, and then I'm coming to Raleigh and Charlotte on March 9th and 10th. Again, tickets for all those shows are live at thenooseolympian.com/live. Other updates, merch. The My Other Pen is Riptide pen is back in stock at thenooseolympian.com/merch. The Camp Regular Person shirts are not there quite yet, and the beads are supposed to be coming this week. So hopefully the shirts and the beads will be there this week, but the pens are for sure back in stock. And head on over to thenooseolympian.com/merch if you want merch. We have What's Good shirts. We have logo stickers. We have TNO socks designed by Kelly. We have Trident pins. We have stickers from all the different tours I've done. We have Pro Pigeon podcast pins. Lots of good stuff over there. Now, scheduling wise, next week should be the final episode of TNO about the TV show, unless I get a really cool interview opportunity with one of the actors or showrunners or something like that. But the plan is for next week's episode to be with two guests who have different Percy Jackson watching history/reading history backgrounds, so that the three of us will all have different perspectives as we kind of recap the entire series, kind of do more overarching thoughts. Then I'm going to take a week off on the week of February 19th because I posted so much stuff and I'm really tired, and I will be on tour, so I will be even more tired. And I have two shows on Sunday, so there's no way I'm going to be able to do the final touches on things. It's going to be really bad if I try to do that. So I'm going to take a week off. And then when we come back the next week, we will do our episodes about the Sea of Monsters movie. Then we'll do some episodes about the Lightning Thief musical. And then it's time for Heroes of Olympus. Very psyched about it. And if you want to stay up to date with the schedule, you can always go to thenooseolympian.com/about. And I always update what the next 4 weeks will look like. Now, me making this show as a full-time job would not be possible without the folks who support the show on Patreon. Thanks to them, I'm able to do this, and I'm able to do things where I post twice as much content while the TV show is going on. Thank you all so much for your support. I really appreciate it. I want to give a shout out to the folks who have joined most recently. So shout out to our newest God tier patron, Zia, and shout out to our newest demigod tier patrons, Michael Reiser, Miranda Graham, Anna, and then a little flower emoji, and then the little degree sign, and then an asterisk, I think, Madeline Deich, Nicole Ciano, Maite, Elizabeth Dalrymple, and Justin Martinez. Thank you all so much for your support. May Hephaestus, and I guess Daedalus, because he has a laptop, may let them bless you that your laptop never does a thing where, like, out of nowhere, the fan just turns on really, really hot and you don't know what's going on, but it sounds like your laptop is about to take off, like it's a spaceship or something. Hopefully they bless you to where that never happens. If you're all caught up on the Noose Olympian and you're looking for new content to consume, I would recommend joining the TNO Patreon. There are hours upon hours of content that you can consume, not only TNO stuff, but you also get access to everything I ever posted on the Potterless version of the Patreon for the 5 years, I was posting stuff regularly there. So there is a mountain of bonus content. You've got bonus episodes, director's commentary, video live streams, all the fun stuff that I've done, the other streams that we did, like the movie streams and the Hades the video game streams. Once you join, you get access to everything instantly. So head on over to thenewestolympian.com/Patreon and check out all those fun goodies to hold you over while you're waiting for the next episode of TNO. Now, before I wrap up here, unless you're listening on Patreon where you get ad-free episodes, you're going to hear words from a few sponsors who make it feasible for me to be a full-time podcaster. Some of those ads will be read by me, others of them won't be. The ones that aren't read by me are inserted locally, and we did switch to a new ad provider. I'm currently putting on the blocking things that block the weird categories we try to avoid, like gambling and things like that, but we have to get that set up. So some of those might sneak through early on, but a big purpose of switching to this new ad provider is we should get less of those ads. So hopefully you don't get any of those, and hopefully if you do in like a week or two, that's not a thing anymore. And also those are inserted locally, so if you live in Equatorial Guinea, don't be surprised if you hear an ad in Spanish, French, or Portuguese, because the internet says that all three are official languages of Equatorial Guinea. But once those ads are complete, we'll get back to this episode of The Newest Olympian. So I got some fun questions about the finale as well, because it was just great. As far as when you found out that you were getting to do the finale, you said you were excited. I think something that is extra exciting about it is that episode 8 begins with the Ares fight, which for me, before the show was made, and for all the actors when they were asked what's the scene to watch, it's that scene. When you found out that you were going to get to direct that, was that an exciting moment, a challenge you're ready to rise to? How did that feel?
Oh, yeah. It was really exciting. And it was something that we were talking about from the beginning. And I know it was something that Walker had been thinking about the whole time because, you know, he'd read about it and he had visualized it in his head for, you know, his whole childhood. So it was something that the stunt team worked very hard on. And it was something that, you know, we all sort of worked very hard on over the course of the time. So, and it was exciting to see it come together. And it was also, you know, a lot of visual effects and a lot of stunts and practical stunts that had to come together. So there's a lot of planning, which was fun to sort of see how it all evolved. And of course, you know, working with Adam, I think Walker was beside himself that he got to fight with the Edge, you know, so it was pretty cool. And I think I've seen a lot on, of Dan Schott's mentioning on different interviews himself of like probably one of the best parts of doing Percy Jackson were those kids because they came to work every day 1,000% in and wanting to do everything at 1,000%. There was never a day where they didn't want to be there or they were late or they didn't know their work or they didn't want to do something. And so when it comes to a big fight like that and you've got Walker who just wants to do everything and then some, it just makes you just want to dive right in. So it was a lot of fun.
That's really cool. Now, when you are directing any episode of the show, but especially the finale, which wraps up a lot of things, there's going to be time jumps and there's going to be parts of the book that can't make it in. I think an example in the finale is when Percy decides to go to Olympus. He has to just get there and you just cut. As a director, how do you just deal with the type of people who might be nitpicky, like, oh, they didn't show this, or like, how they didn't explain that? Like, when it comes to things where you just have to be like, it's a TV show, we got to move it on. Is that just like, you're making the call, you're not worried about those sorts of things, let people have fun? To
be honest, I think because we have Rick, you know, we have Rick there every step of the way, giving us his blessing or giving up his feedback. You know, it's a collaborative art form. It's also an interpretive, you know, approach. There's always going to be, you know, the author's sort of interpretation, such, you know, like John Steinberg, the showrunner, bringing something that's has a sort of a new point of view, but at the same time in keeping with, you know, staying, you know, true to the books. So I feel like we've done this tenfold to the best of our ability, along with a little bit of interpretation. So I feel confident that if there is something that people are disappointed that something's there or not there, that there'll be something else that they'll love. You know what I mean? So I feel like we've done it so well, and I know we have Rick's blessing, so that's the most important thing to all of us, I think.
Yeah. I think another nice thing, or at least a very emotional thing about this episode, is that we see Lance Reddick's performance as Zeus. And of course, he's tragically passed, and the episode has the in memoriam at the end. But what was it like to direct him? Because I've always loved his work. And is your directing feedback just kind of like, yeah, can you just keep sounding like the coolest person on earth?
I mean, it was epic, and I was nervous. I was nervous to work with him because his career is so prolific, and his role in the show was obviously so iconic. And so we all wanted to sort of make it the best it could be, and we did that. And it was probably the most rewarding day on set I've ever had as a director, because I think actually we had a lot of workshops and a lot of chats and a lot of discussions about the script and the character. And it was so enlightening and so inspiring. And it was also challenging because, we had to sort of come to a place where we all sort of felt like we were, building towards a similar sort of ending. And I feel like we did. And I was just so proud of all of us. At the end of the day, I hugged him, and we both got quite emotional because it was a big day. It was a big couple of days. And he gave 1,000, again, he gave 1,000%. And I've just never felt so rewarded at the end of a day in my career before, because I felt like we achieved so much. So of course, when we heard of his passing, we were all so sad and so shocked. But so proud that this will be sort of part of his legacy.
Yeah, that's really nice. And I think the whole scene up on Olympus was fantastic. And one element of it I had a question about was there's a point where Poseidon and Zeus are speaking in ancient Greek to each other. Was there like an ancient Greek coach on set to make sure the pronunciation was right?
Yeah, there was. We did have someone beforehand, but we have an acting coach. And I don't know if the kids or if there's been a lot of press out there about Andrew McIlroy. He's someone that you should talk to as well. He was the star of the show.
Okay.
Andrew was the actor's drama coach 24/7. He worked with those kids and prepared them every day for those scripts and those scenes every day, like an actor's tutorial mega class. It was the most phenomenal thing to watch and be a part of. And that's why those kids' performances are so textured and layered and beautifully complicated. One, because the kids are obviously great and talented and open, but also Andrew did a phenomenal job with them. It's inspiring, and he's an inspiring man. And so I think he was around during the Greek dialogue. Maybe there was a coach beforehand. It was so long ago, I can't remember, but Andrew is a phenomenal person that you should talk to.
Okay. Thank you for the advice. I'll reach out. He sounds fantastic. There's so many great scenes in the finale. One that is the most anticipated, if you know the true plot twist, is when Luke makes it clear that he is actually the villain. He was the lightning thief. And you have that dramatic conversation between him and Percy with the fireworks going off in the background. And I think visually it looked incredible. Was that difficult to shoot and have things be consistent because of the colors? I don't know if it was like the volume or lighting, but you worry about all these things with continuity in different shots. Having something like fireworks makes it seem like that's a very challenging scene to nail.
It was very challenging. I mean, we shot that scene over a week, I think. Again, I can't remember the actual specifics, but it was a long time and very, very planned. I and the DP planned exactly when those fireworks were going off, at what line and what emotion. Like, it always tied into the emotion of the line. If there was some revelation, there was always going to be a big pop. And the big pop, depending on who it was, if it was Luke, it was always red. It was very much planned and very, very intricate and very, very complicated, that sequence, because of the timing of the fireworks, for sure.
Yeah. I think another thing that you can see in the scene and happens throughout the show is the mix of practical effects with some CGI. And it appeared as if when Luke cuts Backbiter down to open the portal, it really looked like a curtain had opened up and there was some lighting around it.
Yeah.
What went into that shot? How much of it was real CGI? What went in? It just looked like a really awesome effect.
There's always lighting integration. So, when Riptide would light up, or, they'd jump through the door, the portal, there was always lighting effects that were practical on set that would be cued. Then that would then be interactive with the visual effects that would then happen afterwards, so that it would always interact with their faces when lights came on and things like that.
Yeah. I have one final Percy Jackson question. It's a scene that's in the very end of episode 8. You see Sally making blue pancakes and putting blueberries on top of them.
Yes.
And this is something that I'm sure like Rick and the team was like, okay, people are going to lose their mind for the blue food.
Yeah.
Was that weird to be like, okay, I need to nail this shot of the blue food, but like people are going to flip their tables in joy.
Yeah, that's the stuff we loved because we knew this would be so important to people, and so it's kind of like the bell. There was like a lot of thought that went into the shot of the pancakes and the color. Everything that you see on this show has been thought about by at least 1,000 people for a very long time. So there's nothing that went unplanned and there was nothing that went half-baked. It was always all in.
Amazing. So that was the chat with Jet. I put the ending to it in the first thing where Jet answered the question about what is the definitive Tim Tam. But thank you all so much for listening to this episode. I really do appreciate it. And I hope you enjoy our next episode, which should be the conclusion of our coverage of the TV show, where I will be talking to Rowan Ellis and Kyle Banduho all about season 1. Rowan had never consumed anything Percy Jackson before watching the show. Kyle had only seen the second movie and he watched it with his kid. So we're going to have so many different perspectives about season 1. I'm very excited for you all to hear that. And then we will progress onward into our episodes about the Sea of Monsters movie, and then the Lightning Thief musical, and then Heroes of Olympus. But until you hear that next episode, I'll see you later. Hello. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of The Newest Olympian. This podcast is created, hosted, and produced by me, Mike Schubert. I also run the social media and the website. Our editor is Sherry Guo. The music is by Bettina Campamanes and Brandon Grugel, and the art is by Jessica E. Boyd. If you can't get enough of the show, you can find us on social media. We're at Newest Olympian on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, and we're on Reddit as well, reddit.com/r/The Newest Olympian. And if you really can't get enough of the show, you can check out the bonus content for the podcast at thenewestolympian.com/Patreon. There's a bunch of bonus content. You can get exclusive merchandise, lots of fun stuff there. And if you want other merchandise, you can go to our merch store, thenewestolympian.com/merch. I mentioned the Patreon, so let's give a shout out to our producer level patrons: Kelsey Gillespie, The Damn Steve Nuggets, Vicky Garcia, Ellie Haskov-Chova, Veronica Bartova, Frida Vikstrom, Megan Moon, Craig McRoberts, Taylor Payne, Sabrina Balsiger, Boney Pony, Polly Burge, Nikki Harris, Tatiana Schmidt, Sandra Rose, Josh Sayre, Josh Wilkie, Abby Ryan, Ashton Gabrielson, Marco Redhouse, Sam Reeby, Riley Kiddes, Mary Kelly, Mrs. O'Leary, Milo Kim, CC Reeds 23, Sandkoff, Julia Kendall, Ricky, John Drielsma, Rayla Matthews, Riley Draken, Luna Kadoon, Sky Mallory, Persasabeth, Aiden Parziani, Biggest Tyson Fan, Hunter Landstrom, Captain Jack Rackham, King Bastion, One Damn Distraction Coming Up, Ginger Spurs Boy, A Cup of Solace, Meg Roy, Lux, Neil, Olivia Krenicki, Mrs. O'Leary is Best Doggo, Bradimus Prime, Keepo Guy, McKenna Finley, Skylar Sisters, Demigod Nurse, Zachary Hamilton, Scott Sheldon, Sophie, Natanya Page, and Ann M. Thayer Cohen. If you want to help out the show in a non-monetary way, just talk about the podcast, whether that is posting about it on social media or reaching out to someone that you think would like the show, or just leaving us a rating and review on whatever podcasting app you are using. All of those things help. Spreading the show's existence via word of mouth is essential for the podcast, so I'm very appreciative to anyone who has done that in the past or will do it in the future. But I'm just so thankful that you tuned into this episode, and I hope you tune into our next episode, where we will be joined by Kyle Banduho and Rowan Ellis to discuss all of season 1 of Percy Jackson and the Olympians. But until then, I'll see you later. Hey everyone, how's it going? It's me, ASMR Mike. So I have a couple of fun things here in the Shubio. One of the things I have is something that I designed in college. Shortest version is that it's an acrylic tube of sorts. So I'm just going to drum my fingers across it and make some noises and such, and that'll be the ASMR Mike segment for this episode. Thank you so much for listening.